Hello everyone, welcome to another Garden City Arts online program. Today we are painting this gorgeous poppy painting that you see in the upper left hand corner of your screen, and I'm going to take you through this step by step on how to complete this painting. It's really fun, there's a lot of details, so it's kind of slow going at points, but I think you're still going to have a blast. Now, if you purchased Garden City Arts Art Kit, then you have all of the colors mixed and ready to go. All you need to do is lay them out on your palette in the order that you see here. Make sure that you have some brushes handy. You need to have some large wash brushes. You need to have a round brush, okay? It kind of has like a point to it. Looks like a pencil. I'm using a number 4, but you can use any any size round brush that you need. Smaller round brushes probably aren't going to help you very much with this painting, so I'd stay with like 4 and bigger. You also might want a shader brush of some kind. I'm using a pretty small one today, but you can always grab a bigger one if you have it. And the other thing, if you have a painting art kit, you are going to need some chalk and your cheat sheet, okay? Now your cheat sheet is a pre-drawn image that we put into your kits. What you need to do is chalk up the back of your image. So you flip it so that the center of your flower is on the right instead of the left, okay? That's how you know that's the back of your tracing paper. You're gonna chalk up all of the lines, and then you flip it over. You want to line it up in the bottom left-hand corner, hold it in place, and then you use the back end of your paintbrush to apply pressure. Wherever you apply pressure, that chalk is going to transfer. If you don't push hard with the end of your pencil, or I'm sorry, the end of your paintbrush, then you will not have a transferred line. So I'm just going to really quickly do a few lines so that you can kind of see what it looks like when it's transferred. Let me see if it's working. Okay, so make sure you hold it in place before you take a peek, but you can see my lines are transferring. Now, they're not transferring quite as well as I would have liked because I didn't chalk up very much. You want to use a lot of chalk, okay? Use a lot of chalk and press hard. Do not feel like you are going to hurt your canvas. You might hurt your tracing paper, but you will not hurt your canvas unless you have some really big muscles. Okay, so I'm calling it good. I'm going to use my chalk, and I am going to just go over the lines and make them a little bit easier for me to see. I have a good reference to get me where I need to be. So go ahead and go over your lines, make sure they are as visible as you need them to be. And once you are done, you can set your chalk down and we can get started on the painting. Make sure that you correct any mistakes now. You want it to be a really clear guide for you. That way you're not guessing as you're painting. Now, once you have an idea of what we're doing drawn out for you, you need to grab your paint palette, and we're going to start with this kind of orangey red. That is our base color. We're going to paint all of the petals are orangey red. Then we'll come in and start adding details, and we'll work one step at a time, one color at a time until we're finished. Now, it's a big flower. There's a lot of petals, so I'd recommend getting the biggest brush you have. I have a 1-inch wash brush, and this guy is the best. Make sure you prime it if you haven't already. Priming your brush basically means you dip it in paint water and then you pat it dry, so you're getting your brush ready to go. Now, I like to outline first, so I use the top edge of my brush to create a line, and then I use the side of my brush to fill in, okay? Top edge creates the line, side of the brush to fill in. If you want all of those really jagged looking edges, you're not going to put those in now. That will drive you crazy if you try to do that. Instead, you're going to paint those in when we paint the background. So it's going to be flat and smooth now. Don't worry, you can make it nice and jagged later. I am just going to quickly give myself an outline. I'm going to paint this in really fast, and I'm going to speed up the video. We'll resume painting in just one moment. So I sped up the video so you didn't have to watch me paint or listen to me paint. However, here's the cool thing about virtual programs like this one. You can pause the video whenever you need, or you can fast forward the video whenever I'm boring and I'm talking too much. So keep in mind, you can go at your own pace. I just fast forwarded, and I'll fast forward through parts where it's a lot of like busy work so that you don't have to listen to me, and you can kind of pause the video when you're ready and go on whenever you're ready. So I have my petals painted orange. Next, I am going to put in some detail. This is the first step, and we're just basically kind of establishing what's going to be dark and what's going to be light. Area that's closest to the opening of our flower, the center of our flower is going to be dark. The tips of the petals are going to be lighter, okay? So we're going to do all of those basic details in first, then we'll add our background. That way we can go back in and cut, and we don't have to worry about all of those little details. So I'm going to continue with a big brush. Use whatever brush you have, and I'm going to come in right around the center of my flower, and I'm going to start adding some detail. So what happens is I use the edge of my brush, the side of my brush, to paint in solid red. Now, this little petal right here, it crisscrosses, kind of bends back and covers the opening. So what you want to do is leave this petal nice and orange, and you're going to come in with the red and paint behind it, and that will make it look like it's doing what I was telling it was doing, like it's flipping back towards the center. Now, once you have a nice dark ring around the center, you're going to take your brush, you're going to use the top edge of it, and you're going to start painting out and adding the detail. So these little veins in your petals are what will make it feel really lifelike. These little thin lines, we're going to be adding so many of those. So get ready. Get ready to add a whole bunch. Start from the center and paint out. Now, you don't want to just paint one straight line. Look at how these petals move. They curl, right? They curl, they go around. So start envisioning what your petals are doing and start curling or curving, I should say, the lines how you think they should. I'm coming pretty high up. I'm covering up quite a bit of my flower with those little veiny lines. So go ahead and keep going. I would say you want to stop about 3/4 of the way up your petal, okay? So 1/4 of your petal is going to remain that orangey color, and we'll come back and deal with that in just 1 second. The rest is going to be this red color. And if you're getting a little bit of blending going on, that's not a bad thing. That's okay. You can even bring this red up a little bit more if you feel like it would be darker in certain areas of your petal. That's how I got this one to stand out. I put dark behind it, so think about using it that way. Okay, and once you're done with that, you're going to swirl, tap, and dry. And then we're going to add some highlights. Now the highlights are really fun, and we can start really introducing some fun details to this petal in some form. I'm going to use my next color, which is this highlight. It's basically a lighter version of my orangey red. And I'm going to use the top edge of my paintbrush, just like I've been using it, to create these little lines. I'm primarily keeping it at the top of my petal, but if it comes down a little bit and blends into another color, that's okay. You can also use the flat edge of your brush if you feel like it needs to be smoothed out. Okay, so use the top edge at the thinnest part of the brush, for that little detail and those little lines, and use the flat edge of your brush if you feel like it needs to be smooth and it's just supposed to cover area. Now, highlight can pull a petal forward like this, while not putting highlight will push that other petal backwards. And that's an important thing to do. You want to make sure you're doing a little bit of that. And I'm also going to put just a little bit of highlight on this petal. Now we're just starting off with some detail. We'll come back in and add quite a bit more detail to our petals. But this is just kind of like the beginning, right? We're priming the petals. Okay, so swirl, tap, and dry your brush when you have some highlight. And remember, you don't have to have highlight on every single petal. Just put it wherever you feel like it's most effective. It should be on the top 1/4 of your petal, just on the tips of the petal. Now, if you have a dark outline on your petal where you didn't get quite far enough, that's okay. We're going to do the background next, and that'll take care of that. So, your petal, your flowers, petals included, are going to have to flip around a little bit for this next step because we are painting the background in solid turquoise, okay? Now, when we do this, we will have to cut into the petals quite a bit, okay? If you want that tattered edge, you have to cut into it. You can shape your petals and make them look however you want by using your background color. And we will start doing that in just 1 second. Okay, this light blue kind of turquoisey color, that's the color we're using for the background. And we're going to paint that right now. I'm going to use a smaller brush first as I'm doing this detail, just to be a little bit more controlled. You can still use the big brush you were using for the petals if you want to. It's up to you. My paint's a little dry, so I'm mixing a little bit of water into it. And now I'm going to cut into the edge first. So that's going to be my I can't talk tonight. That is going to be my primary goal, is to basically create the edge of the flower and get it exactly how I want it. So I may have to do a second layer, and that's okay, no stress. The first layer is kind of just like the covering up. The second layer can be the finisher, what it'll actually look like. So as you can see, this first layer, the reason I said the first layer is just the primer, is because you can tell that it's not really, it's kind of muddy. By putting another layer on, it'll take care of that mud. I just have to let the first layer dry. Sorry about that. So when I'm cutting into my petal, I am using the edge of my brush, the thinnest part. If I want a flatter, smoother line, then I'm going to use my brush flatly, okay? Now, I'm going to speed up the video. We'll start back in a second. All right, I'm gonna stop the video and we're gonna move on. We're gonna let the first layer of blue paint dry on the background, and then we're gonna move on to the center of our flower. Now the center of our flower, we're going to paint dark purple, and we're gonna paint it using a 1/2 inch wash brush, or just anything kind of smaller than that big 1-inch brush. The reason for this is it just helps us get a little bit more control. We are starting to get more into the details, so we're going to start working smaller and making sure that we're really in control on how we apply the paint. Now, it's going to take probably 2 coats, easy, for this center. That's just kind of how it is. So I'm going to start by outlining the outer edge of the center of my flower using the top edge of my brush. And then I can fill it in. I'm going to fill it in solid. Now, like I said, it's going to take 2 layers, so no stress. We will come back to it in just a moment. But for now, you can swirl, tap, and dry your brush. If you need to take a beverage break, you are more than welcome to. We're going to take a quick moment to let all of our paint dry, because as you can see, my paint's pretty thick and it needs to dry before I can move on. So take a beverage break. We'll meet back here in just a second. Or you can just push play on the video as soon as you're done. All right, Now that everything's a little bit drier, we can do some touch-ups before we move on. So we're going to turn our attention back to the background for just a moment. Actually, I am mistaken. We are going to first add a second layer of purple to the center of your poppy. Get it as dark and perfect as possible, and then we are going to turn our attention back to the background. So I'm adding a second layer of my purple, my dark purple, same one that I did for my first layer. And once that is covered, we'll have to clean out our brushes really well. All right, I now have a nice purple center. I'm going to swirl, tap, and dry my brush, and then let's talk about the background. You have lots of options on what to do with it. You could leave it the way it is, that's fine, or you can come in, do a second layer to kind of cover up any mistakes you may have made previously, wherever it was primed but not completely covered. And then as you come out on this second layer, you can start adding some green. And that's the very last color that I have on here. Some green to the edges, and then you can speckle in some more of that to make it kind of just like a greenish blur on the edge. So the goal is to keep it light blue close to the petals, and then as it comes away, just gets a little bit greener. Maybe turns it to like a bluish green. You don't have to do this by any means. It's an optional step. You could also do something different. You could, if you had some blue paint on hand, you could make it darker. Really, it's up to you what you'd like to do. I just like to add a little bit of change so that it's not just solid blue. Okay. And we have plenty of the light blue, so you can have some fun and be creative. Now I'm being really thick with my paint application. I'm using way more paint than what I would normally use because I want it to be solid, and because when I come in with some green and do some tapping, I can come back in with some blue and do some more tapping on top and get that really fun transition from the green to the blue. That makes it look just a little bit more interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna bring it back down. Add some more light blue wherever I need it. And then I'll be ready to move on, and the background will be finished and ready to go. We'll just have to worry about the rest of the petal and all that good detail. Now, at this point, you might be looking at your petal and you might be going, I don't know, I don't really like this. That's okay. It's not even close to being done. We have not put in one of the most important parts, which is some of the dark outlines that separate the petals. And the reason we haven't put that in yet is because basically that all starts from the center of the flower. So now that we have a good solid center that we're waiting to dry, we will be able to build from that center and add all of those really nice details. Now, this green, I put it at the very end because I was going to suggest that you come back in and splotch it on the edges at the very end. but why not, you know, do it while we are already doing touch-ups. So now that our background is done, we can swirl, tap, and dry our brush. We actually don't need our big brush anymore. We're going to use our round brush to add in some details. So this is when we can separate the petals by adding some darker colors. The way we do that is that we're going to take some purple and some red, and we're going to mix it together to make that dark red. And this is the color that we're going to use to start at the petal, start at the center of our flower and work up the petal. So as we come up, I'm using my round brush to create some really nice lines. If you, like me, don't like the round brush, then you could use your 1/2 inch wash brush. That's what I'm going to do. If you are a beginner painter or someone who doesn't really like the wash brush, doesn't really understand how to like use it to curve it and stuff, then continue using the round brush. I'll probably switch between the two back and forth throughout the rest of this painting. So if you're using the 1/2 inch brush, then you are using the top edge and you're just kind of using it to create those nice lines. Now, the more water you mix into your paint, the more transparent it's going to be. So that's really effective when you're getting up higher in the petal and you want it to be a little bit more subtle. But when you're down low, close to the center, you want it to be nice and thick, opaque paint, and you want it to be nice and heavy. Okay, so down where it connects to the center of your flower, heavy. Up as it gets farther away, lighter, more water. So you have a big decision. You need to decide where to put these lines and where to separate your petals. It's up to you. You can look at the original painting to kind of give yourself a guide if you don't have any ideas. Personally, I like to just go kind of off of what I've already done, mixed with the original painting. So we're just going to put in some detail. Again, we're starting pretty close to the center of our flower, and then we're coming out, adding some of those lines. Now, as you get further away from the center, that's where you add more of the transparent paint. Okay, so more layers. So you mix more water into your paint. And you can add those little lines. Now, if at any point you feel like, ooh, I went too far, that's okay, no stress. That's why we have more of the other colors, right? So we can go back in with the red and we can calm it back down. Now, these dark colors, the detail colors, we are not putting them anywhere close to the edges of our flowers. Maybe where there's some overlapping, but we are minimally applying it close to the tips of the flowers. For the most part, we're keeping it down low. Once you have done some details, you can come in and kind of darken any lines you feel like need to stand out more. So anywhere where the petals are separate or separated, that is definitely where I would add more of the dark. Okay, so we have the dark mixed in. Now I'm going to come back in with my red And anywhere where I feel like I may have forgotten, so like this petal in the corner here, I'm going to add a little touch of red. Anywhere where I've got maybe a little heavy-handed and I want to get rid of it, I can add some of that red. Or anywhere where I feel like I need it smoothed out. So now's the time to do some like little touches and tweaks. I can also go back in with my highlight and let's see, I feel like I really missed this petal in particular. So you could come in and do some more touch-ups. Try not to do what I just did, which was being very flat with my brush. You want to use the top edge of your brush really and create those little veins like we talked about earlier. Okay, now, right now, it's a pretty good flower, but there's a definite separation or disconnect between the petals and the center. So we're going to work on the center now. Now my center is still a little wet. Yours might be too. You could take a beverage break, let it dry and come back to it. If you want to continue painting, you can do what I'm about to do, which is to take my round brush and draw a bit of a circle or an oval in the middle of my opening. And I'm going to do that with my light purple. So I'm going to take my light purple paint and I'm going to draw an opening. Now, that little oval is the center of our flower. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little dot in the middle of it, and all of my points, all my lines that I'm going to paint in are going to come to that center. And they're going to all kind of point and meet up right there. Now, once I have that done, I am going to start adding curved lines that connect the circle inside the center of my flower with the outer edge. And I'm going to do these little curved lines, and as they go around, they might curve a little different. They might go in different directions. They might straighten out a little bit temporarily, and then they might curve back. So they're going to go all the way around. If your paint is really dry like mine, you might have to mix some water into it. And once you are done with that, you can take your next color, which is your light blue. And with this light blue, we're going to basically kind of go over and exaggerate the lines that I've already done. Basically just adding some extra additional pop. The other thing that I can do, and I forgot to put white on the plate, but I will not forget to put white on your kit or in your kits, is to have some white that you can use to brighten any of these colors that you need as you go. So kind of the top of the curve, so the curve line kind of goes down on the edges. That curve in the middle, that's where you want to put that highlight and maybe concentrate the blue as well. You can also grab some of your background color and throw it in there. I like to kind of have a whole bunch of colors in the center. Okay. And once you are happy with the center, we're ready to start taking all that gorgeous detail that we just added to the center and kind of bringing it out and connecting that center to the petals. So the way we do that is that we take the light purple, and you can mix a little bit of white into it if you want to. I'm going to just use the regular light purple, and I'm going to add these little tiny fringe hairs right on the edge of the center. Okay, now feel free to add some white if you need to every once in a while. You could even add just a touch of that background color every once in a while, really pop. And we're just going to add these. You're not going to add them to this petal. This petal you kind of treat differently than all the other petals. And the goal is to have some pretty watery paint so that it's semi-transparent and it kind of feels like it connects. You want to cover up any of the red, so you want to get really close to the center. And you want to block out any red where it's close. As it fans out, that red can pop and stand out. And remember, a little bit of that background color looks really nice if you just throw it in every once in a while. Okay, now the last thing that you'll want to do is to bring some of this color up and into the petals. I just do this wherever, like if there's a particular part or a particular petal that you really, really like, emphasize that by putting just a little bit of this color coming up and out. I especially put it along kind of where the dark edges of the petal are. I think it looks particularly good there. And I am just about finished. The only other thing that I could do is come in and kind of touch up the center. You really don't want the purple coming too much into the center. It should be just coming right up to it, okay? And the other thing that you could do, of course, is if you look at it and you feel like there's an area that needs more contrast, maybe some more dark lines, for instance. By contrast, I mean like it's just not dark enough in that particular area or not light enough. You can go in and play with your lights and darks and make it pop. The other thing you can do is play with your background if you feel like it's not quite where you want it. Of course, you can use your colors to manipulate the background. And after you have the center coming out into the petals, you're really done. Pat yourself on the back, guys. This is not an easy painting, and you stuck through it and you got to the finish. I bet you have a beautiful product. If you want to share your beautiful painting with Garden City Arts, please do so. Post it online and make sure you tag Garden City Arts. I hope you have a good rest of your evening and see you again. Thank you for watching this online program. Please help Garden City Arts thank these generous sponsors.